Welcome, friends, to an online talk hosted by All Under One Banner. My name is Andrew. I help to organise All Under One Banner, and I'll be your chair for this evening. Now that folks are joining us, I'll like to make 3 quick points. Firstly, we continue to miss the massive indie family, and we look forward to being with every single one of you as soon as it's possible. You're all in our minds. Please continue to take the very best care of yourselves and your clans, especially as the lockdown begins to evolve and the rules change day by day. If there are any technical difficulties this evening, please bear with us, and we will persevere. This event is being live streamed on Facebook and other platforms, so if you would like to watch this evening's discussion back, then you will be able to do so there, and also on the All Under One Banner YouTube channel. Everyone apart from your guest and me are muted on this video conference. We will, of course, take questions from everybody present. If you would like to ask a question, please either raise your hand, which you can do if you press the participants button at the bottom of the page, or please use the chat function. Using chat, please type your name and the question which you would like to ask. That way we can manage the questions and everyone can hear what's going on. All Under One Banner is all about organising marches on the streets of towns and cities across Scotland in support of Scottish independence. We are not organising any marches at the moment, but of course, when it is the proper time to do so, we will do so immediately. Please also bear in mind that in the near future, there will be a Stirling Live online Ceilidh on Broadcasting Scotland on Saturday, the 12th of September. We also have plans for more talks and discussions online, and I'll say more about those both at the end of this evening. While All Under One Banner was planning this series of talks and discussions, we began to receive videos about Scotland and Scottish history with the request that we post them on our Facebook page. Having checked them out, we did as we were asked, and the videos have proved extremely popular. I'm delighted to say that the man behind those videos, Mr. Bruce Fummey, has agreed to join us here this evening. Bruce is from Perth and is a public speaker, entertainer, stand-up comedian, tour guide, and a star of YouTube now. He lives in Perthshire with his wife and has 2 grown-up wains. Bruce has a degree in physics, and he taught both physics and maths in the past. He moved into training, and that then evolved into public speaking and stand-up comedy. Now, you'll note that Bruce is not a historian, and he is certainly not a nasty wee archaeologist who could do with a haircut. Bruce makes no claims for historical scholarship. However, once you hear him speak, I know that you will agree that he brings our history alive. Bruce has won many awards, including Speaker of the Year, Wag of the Year in 2014, Wag of the Year, and in 2014 he was named Scottish Comedian of the Year. Bruce is a Burns enthusiast and, about 5 stones ago, he says, was a keen rugby player at clubs such as Perthshire, Glasgow Accies, Brechin, Grangemouth and Crieff. Bruce, Wag of the Year, you played rugby, and then if you're a wag, you married a footballer. Are you Gabby Logan in drag or something?
No. No, in the other sense, that was way before the wag term came about, wasn't it?
I'll take
you disappeared, by the way.
That's okay, you're on now.
Right. Oh, so this is me. This is me, right, okay.
So having given you that introduction, Bruce,
No, I know it, yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the introduction. Now, the thing is, you mentioned a panic button, and I was desperately looking for the panic button on my screen. So thank you. Yes, the thing is, when you read that introduction, you think, geez, I've failed at a lot of stuff.
Not at all.
And to justify the route through that maze, I was a physics teacher, and then Scottish Amicable set up a computer-based training department that was ideal for physics teachers. So it was a natural kind of move into computer-based training. And then, once you're in you learn about finance and became a financial advisor. The big change was that 39 when I saw 40 approaching, and I thought, I hate this job. What do you want to do with your life? And quick as a flash, I said I'd be a stand-up comic. And do you know this? I listened to a motivational tape, and the guy in the motivational tape said, if you want to know what you should do with the rest of your life, ask yourself 3 questions. 1, what would you do if you had all the money in the world but you had to do something? 2, what would you do if you never ever got paid for it? 3, what would you do if you were going to be perfectly happy for the next 6 months and then you were going to drop down dead? That's what you should do with the rest of your life. And quick as a flash, I said I'd be a stand-up comic. And exactly 6 months to the day after listening to that tape, I walked on stage at the Stand Comedy Club in Edinburgh, and sure enough, I died. So I suppose all the prophecies came true. But I did shows at Edinburgh Fringe for years, always about, my first one was about physics because I was still a physics teacher at the time, or I'd gone back to teaching physics because I thought that's closer than working in finance to being a stand-up. And it was about the history of physics. And then I got a nice review, but they said, what is he going to do next year? And I thought, what else? And I did one about Tam O'Shanter, because I was into Burns, and then that sold out. And then I did one about the Jacobites, and that sold out. And then bit by bit by bit, and I became a stand-up that was doing stuff about Scottish history. And I did one about, I did a show called Macbeth without the Shakespeare bullet in 2017, I think it was. And then I thought I could take people to these places. Do you know what I mean? So, and now I always hate when people say, oh, this history guy, because I'm not, basically all I know about Scottish history is in the context of filthy jokes. Do you know what I mean? So, and I always say to people, I'm not a history guy. I'm just a bobad with a smartphone and a tripod stand. And, and I wander about the country telling people about things that I'm interested in. And I'm, that interests me. So I was kind of, I'll be honest, I was a bit reticent about doing something like this, where people could actually ask you questions as opposed to, you write a script. And I didn't want to just kind of, I did a video a couple of weeks ago about how Scotland got its borders, how it came to be, and which seemed like a kind of logical thing to do in this context. But I didn't want to just kind of read the script from the video. I want people to go and watch the videos. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. The reason I'm subjecting myself to this experience, it's way scarier than stand-up comedy. So that people go and watch the videos. So I'm just going to chat, if that's okay.
Yes.
And but I thought I should kind of think about, is there a theme, or is there a bumper sticker, a concise point that's to be made? And I think it is that we're not unique, we're just lucky. And I mean that in 2 senses. In the fact that we get to live in modern day Scotland, and also in the context of the independence struggle. Because we're lucky that geological movements and volcanic eruptions have given us the geological environment that we've got here. Things that happened millions of years ago that have got nothing to do with us created the West Highlands and beaches in the Hebrides and all that we've got available to us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the fact that the ocean's currents are the way that they are give us a more temperate climate than should be expected at our kind of latitudes. And all of that is just luck. It's just, you know what I mean? They're just accidents, and yet they impact on our daily life every day in life. And I always get so frustrated when, you see on Question Time or whenever. I should have started timing this, shouldn't I?
No,
I'm supposed to do it about 20 minutes, half an hour. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So I always, you see these kind of right-wing, well-deserving rich types, and they, wow, he's entitled to keep his money because he's worked hard for that money. Do you know what I mean? And as a tour guide and a stand-up, I think I work hard. You know, there are times when you get up at 6 a.m, drive down to Edinburgh, pick up some people, show them round, drop them, and I've done this, you know, and drop them up at Drum the Droch in the evening, then drive down to do a nighttime gig, then drive back up to pick them up the next morning. And I think I work hard, but the fact of the matter is that I didn't make the mountains. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't invent whiskey. I didn't write Outlander. I never stood at Culloden. I never stood at Bannockburn. I just reaped the benefits of all those things that have happened in our past, in our history. And I'm just this lucky guy that gets to drive around the countryside and talk about it, you know. And you might spend a week with a group of people and basically pay you to go on holiday and drive around Scotland and talk about Scotland. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, how many people get to go on holiday with their family and talk about what interests them for a week? Do you know what I mean? It never happens.
Nope.
And then at the end of it, they pay you, and the end of it, they give you a tip. You know what I mean? It's just, and so I see myself as just one of the luckiest people, because being a tour guide's like, it's not the best job in the world. Being a stand-up is, but it's the second best job in the world. And to be in such a fortunate place, I count myself very, very lucky. What we're going to I've made some bullet point notes here because I started rambling there, so I should go back.
Don't worry. I was going to say, Bruce.
Yeah,
you were going to talk to us about the subject for this evening is, how did Scotland get its borders? So
I know, but the point I'm coming to that, right? But the point I wanted to make is that we're not unique here in Scotland. We're just lucky, both in terms of being what Scotland has become and the whole independence struggle type of things. And the point, we all stand on the shoulders of a wonky haggis hunting dog. That's the point I'm trying to make.
I get it.
And we're all kind of the children or descendants from immigrants, whether those immigrants were, you know, the hunter-gatherers that came across the Dogger Bank, you know, 4,000 years ago or whatever, and started, you know, chasing things to hunting things every day, or whether we're, you know, descended from the farmers that came later, because the hunter-gatherers are, they're hunting, they're gathering, they're picking up what's available, and then farming came from Syria across, and the farmers said to the hunter-gatherers, look, there's no point in going out every day hunt and gather new stuff. You go hunt new animals every day. You should breed with animals. And people in Aberdeen thought this was a fantastic idea, and that's how farming took off here in Scotland, right? And I'm going up tomorrow. I'm going up to the Cranach. And it struck me that, you know, from having these little farms to, you know, settlements to then tribal groups. And the Cranach is up at Aberfeldy, Kenmore, that I'm going to visit to film a thing tomorrow. Would have been there around, it's kind of late Bronze Age, early Iron Age, okay? And there would have been people living in these cranachs about the time that the Romans came, yeah? And before the Romans came, you've got these people. Why are they on cranachs? One of the reasons that they're on, cranachs are these things on the water and stilts, and you can walk out to them just in case. And it's always difficult because there are always people in here that know way more than I know, and there might be some people that have never heard of a cranach, I don't know. But they're out in the water, so you can go out and they're on stilts, and it provides protection from people that might attack them, but it also provides the ability to go around about Loch Tay. There were 18 different cranachs. So you imagine these people who have kind of put themselves out in the water for protection, but at the same time use the waterway of the loch for communication with other cranachs. And it struck me that all the way through the things that we're going to talk about, there are two things. There are external threats and there are strategic alliances. And everything that happened to bring us to where we are, the lucky place that we are today as Scots, have been external threats and strategic alliances that are taken up in order to compete with that. And because very few of us want to live as a hermit on our own in a cave, but very few of us, I would suggest, want to live as part of a single global world with one administration that governs the whole world. And we have to find our place somewhere in amongst that. And we often get caught up in the whole independence debate, but essentially that's what we're debating, is where do we think our balance of external threats and strategic alliances live. And your Nigel Farage focuses a lot on external threats from people that aren't really a threat to him. Anyway.
Not at all.
And the thing is, a million little things have happened over history to get us to where we are. And it would be it'd be madness to point to any one event as significant, yeah? So I thought I'd spend the next 20 minutes pointing to events that were significant. So you've got these people in Cranachs that have got no concept of Scotland, but they've got external threats and they've got strategic alliances. And then along comes the Roman Empire, yeah? And the people gather together under Calgacus. A lot of people know, I don't know, can I go, but the Romans arrive about 50 AD, and they gradually move north. 83 AD, they cross into what we call Scotland to subdue the north. And all these little tribal groups come together under a leader that's called Calgacus, right? And let's remember, this was reported to us from Tacitus, the Roman historian, right? It's not... It's not one of the North Britons that are writing this. Okay?
No.
And Calgacus, the leader, the swordsman, gives a speech saying, "We are the last of the free," as the Roman Empire has traveled across the world. And these people in their kin groups have come together to fight an external threat. They've made these alliances against this external threat. And what struck me was that 1700 years later, on Culloden Field, you had those same kin groups, coming together in strategic alliances to fight the external threat of the current empire of the time. And whilst technology in the Highlands had changed, and the world had changed over that period, you still had the same thing going on. And that, that combination of things happened all the way through our history. And it also struck me that it's our good fortune to have the geological structures in which we find ourselves. Because if Scotland had been a flat land with fantastic farmland all the way through, then number one, the Romans would probably have gone through us like they went through everyone else. And number two, they would have a much greater motivation to do it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that Highland boundary that we find ourselves with, in many ways, it strikes me, saved Scotland being subsumed into Rome at the time.
Yeah.
We kind of, before Scotland even existed, it was fighting off, it managed to, through luck, fight off the incursions of the Roman Empire. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And all the way through, when Rome disappears, the Romans go away, And I'm sure a lot of people realize this quickly. The Romans disappear 4th century, and the Picts and the Scots are coming across the wall. They're coming around the wall. And what did the Romanized Britons do? To stop these barbarians coming across the wall, they go and get another group of barbarians, German barbarians, Angles and Saxons, to fight the barbarians coming across the wall, because your sailing barbarians are coming across the water, they're fine. It's your wall climbing barbarians you've got to watch out for. And so the Saxons come across and they push the Britons to the west. You know, if you imagine the map and somewhere about the Kelpies, maybe not exactly there, but it's a thing that everyone knows.
Yep.
And to the north and the east, you've got the Picts. And to the north and the west, you've got the Scots, or the Gaels. And to the south and the west, you've got the Britons, the Welsh, effectively. And to the south and east, you've got the Saxons, and the Saxons are attacking the Britons, and the Britons are attacking the Scots, and the Picts are and everyone's. You've got the Vikings coming across the sea. Medieval Scotland was like Game of Thrones without the smart arse midget. That's basically what it was like, right? And in that kind of melee, I wanted to mention a couple of battles, because so many possibilities were there. There was never any certainty that Scotland would emerge from that. Okay.
Yep.
And I wanted to mention the Battle of Nectansmere that happened 685, when the Saxons are dominant. And so bear in mind, below the Forth Clyde line, in the east of the country, you've got Saxons, in the west of the country, you've got Britons. And so the Saxons have the dominant power, but the Picts are under Bredi, they're not giving them the homage that they're due. So they come up to teach them a lesson. And the Picts, they retreat until they suck the Saxons all the way up. And the Saxons, who are clearly the most powerful, bound to win this battle, they get strung out in their supply lines, etc., and they get wiped out in Nectansmere. And here's my point. There are a million different ways that Scotland might not have come to be. And that battle that the Saxons were destined to win, okay, had that gone the way it was supposed to, then we would have been subsumed into that Saxon kingdom, that Northumbrian Saxon kingdom, way before Robert the Bruce ever fights for Scotland's independence. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And it just strikes me that there are a million little events along the way between then and now to get us to where we are now. And I'm looking, I think I've already talked for about 20 minutes, so I'm going to talk more quickly.
No, don't worry.
All right.
Yeah.
And the other battle in that period that I wanted to talk about was, or mention rather than talk about, is in 837. So we've still got these four kingdoms fighting out. By now, you've got the Vikings have come across the sea, and they're making their impact felt. And the Scots and the Picts come together to fight. Now, by this stage, the Scots in Argyll are kind of a vassal state to the Picts, a vassal kingdom, we're going to put that to the Picts. But they come together to fight the Vikings, and most of the Pictish nobility gets wiped out. And it's into that vacuum that Kenneth MacAlpin, the first King of Scots, comes.
Yeah.
And essentially, the Scots and the Picts come together as a strategic alliance against the external threat of the Vikings. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
In 1018, but that's how Alapa comes to be, because these two petty kingdoms, you want to put it that way, come together against that external threat. And then later on, once Alapa solidified as a nation, yeah, come 1018, Malcolm II, who's the granddad of Duncan that Macbeth supposedly, right? Now we know that didn't happen, right? We know, I've got a video about that. You can check it out, right? So in actual fact, Malcolm was much more of a stabby, killy guy but his grandson, Duncan, up until then, there was no such thing as hereditary succession. And Malcolm II, he wants to impose hereditary succession on, as opposed to the law of tannacy that's existed for the Scots up until then, for Alapa. Anyway, he's the guy who, along with the Britons, defeat the Saxons of Northumbria at the Battle of Carham in 1018. And that's when the Lothians become part of Scotland at that point. King Canute was the all-powerful king of England and Denmark, but he just, at the time, he just thought, you know what, I've got so many other things on my plate, right? You can look after Lothian I'll deal with that later, and then he dies, okay? So gradually Lothian becomes part of Scotland, but it could have been so much different. And again, why did the Britons of Strathclyde join in with Alapa to fight the Saxons? Strategic alliances against external threats, and bit by bit, then little do the Britons of Strathclyde know that 100 years from now they're going to get. It's a bit longer than that, right? But they're going to get subsumed as well. Do you know what I mean? And there are just a million little points along the way where things could have been different. And here's the thing that I think we all need to think about. And during the 2014 referendum, I was at a stall in the High Street in Perth, you know, a yes stall. And this English guy, elderly, kind of, middle classy, well-to-do, educated, kind of just come from the golf club, you know the type. And if there are any types like that on the Zoom thing, right? There's maybe just you and me. I don't know.
Well, I'll interrupt you. I'll tell you, there are 200 people watching on Facebook. There are 145 watching on Twitter.
If I'd known that, I would have been better.
You couldn't have been better. Come on.
I kind of wish you hadn't told me that now, right?
You're doing great.
The point is, the guy said to me, he said, now, also, if you're a kind of English, educated, bit posh, golfy type person, there's nothing wrong with that. Right? It's okay to do that, right? The point I make is that he said to me that, what are you making all this fuss about? Nobody hears the Picts anymore. Do you know what I mean? And you're like, oh, right, that we should accept, right? And it's true that loads of peoples and have been subsumed into making Scotland, yeah?
Yep.
But the idea that, well, the Picts went by the wayside, you should just lie down, shut up, and go quietly in a long good night. Do you know what I mean? That's ludicrous. The idea that the Picts went, okay, Gov. Do you know what I mean? And it's just ludicrous. And but when you go, well, so should England? Should England just kind of genuflect to Angela Merkel? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. You imagine Theresa May goes to Angela Merkel and she wants the Section 50 or whatever number it is, and Angela Merkel said it's not the time. Can you imagine? Right? So, but during the time of the Picts, right, there would have been Picts that were unionists,
Yep.
and gone, do you know what, we'll join with the Scots, right?
Yeah.
There would have been Picts, it would be nationalists, and everyone would have been fighting their corner, right?
Yes.
And none of them are good or bad people. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
just that people make choices and decisions for themselves, right? And I think it's really important. And the debate that we have just now, number one, to recognise that there were nationalist and unionist Picts. Do you know what I mean? There were nationalist and unionist Britons of Strathclyde. Do you know what I mean? And there will be nationalist and unionists. And there's no inevitability to what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
Although Andrew Marr did say that Scotland was going to get independence in the next 4
Within
years.
5 years.
And if
Yeah.
anyone knows, then he would be the guy that would know. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So we can have a party now. And so what I'm saying is that number one, nobody's going to give it to you, right? Nobody gave it to anyone in the past. And number two, both we are where we are as a consequence of a series of accidents that have brought us to where we are today. And if Pictland still existed, and I would be in Pictland. You're in Edinburgh, aren't you?
I am. Yep.
So you would be a Saxon, right?
Yep.
Screw you, mate, right? But who's to say that would have been better or worse? We don't know. All we know is what we have just now. And John Scott, stand-up comic, I remember I did a show the year of the referendum. He did a pro-indie show as well. An important thing he said was, people say, oh, but you don't know what you're getting yourself into. And he said, yeah, but I know what I'm walking away from.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so all the way along, when Galloway, under David the First, Galloway's still very fiercely independent, yeah. They didn't want to be subsumed into Scotland. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so what's right, what's wrong? Only individual wants for themselves, and they have to make that happen. There's no there's no inevitability about anything. Is the point that I'm kind of in a rambling way trying to make? Okay.
Yeah.
And so I've kind of obviously so the Battle of Carnham 1018 brings the Lothians into Scotland, and then later the Strathclyde gets drawn into Scotland. Even later still, Galloway gets drawn into Scotland. And here's the thing: in Gaelic, the word Gaul is stranger, foreigner. Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can see the geography of the country. Galloway comes from Gaul. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Hebrides in Gaelic are Inch Gaul, the islands of the strangers. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Caithness in English in Gaelic is Gallan. Yeah.
Ah.
So these strangers, these places of strangers in Caithness, the Hebrides, and Galloway in English were all these Viking and eventually, slowly but surely, the Canmore kings. The Canmores, I think everything goes back to the Canmores. Do you know what I mean? And we can talk about that, because I'm conscious that I've already taken up too much time.
No,
but
you're good.
To me, everything goes back to the Canmores and Malcolm, because Malcolm Canmore kills Macbeth, who, you know what I mean, you could argue the last great Celtic king of Scotland.
Yep.
And then that tussle goes on between, because Malcolm's grown up in England, yeah? And then he defeats Macbeth. And then when he dies, Malcolm dies, his brother wants to take people back to the Celtic kind of way. But Malcolm's sons, who have also fled to England when Malcolm's brother Donald comes to the throne, they come up and they come up with all their southern ways. Those Canmore kings were the kind of start, I think, of the slippery slope towards unionism. I bet they voted Tory, right?
Brought up in the South with his Marks and Spencer's chocolate biscuits. I get you.
It's Marks and Spencer. I was eating Marks and Spencer's chocolate biscuits. There's nothing wrong with Marks and Spencer's chocolate biscuits. Unless you eat them in a golf club with an English accent like Genius has to. Anyway. But that guy had his view. He's entitled to that. We live in a democracy. That's the point.
Yep.
That's the point I want to make about, right?
Yeah.
We're not unique. We're just lucky.
Yes. Because
we have the good fortune. When you go back, all these events that have happened, what David, the first was essentially a Norman something.
Yeah. We'll capture all these questions and we'll bring them up. So
yes, David the First was brought up in Norman, England, and it was because of his sister marrying Henry the First. I know that, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Don't argue me. I've done this shit for years. Right? So, what was I going to say? Now your heckler. Now he's got me off track.
Well, I was going to say, ignore the comments for now. We'll bring them in once you've had your say.
Yeah. So, I was talking about the Canmores, and I can't remember why I was talking about the Canmores.
We're saying Malcolm had grown up in England.
They were a key. To me, that was transformational. I was talking about our good luck, right? Yeah. That when you go back, every one of these events, right? The Battle of the Largs essentially being the final one where we got the Hebrides after the Battle of Largs. But every one of these events, people died. Do you know what I mean? And we aren't unique. We're just so lucky that all we have to do is put a cross in a box. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I just look and we're not unique. We're just lucky, and we make. There's external threats and strategic alliances, and I would suggest that it would be great to have a Scotland where, we deal with external threats by trying to ally ourselves to good people throughout the world. But there's no guarantee. And here's the thing, you've got a debate. I'm in the Green Party, but in the SNP, right, you've got a debate about this whole, the possibility of the divisions and stuff going on, right? And with the whole Alex Salmond thing and blah, 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 blah. And Carlsberg don't do MI5 conspiracies, but if they did, I reckon, do you know what I mean? Whatever I have no idea about the personal issues, but this is not the time for people to be arguing amongst themselves, when you're kind of on the brink of potentially something very important. And I'll finish in this, that a million things happened in the lead up to each, we look at each of these events. The Battle of Carnham happened, the Battle of Largs happened, or Malcolm Canmore took over. And we look at these key events, and at the start I said it's crazy to look at any individual event because so many millions of events, and I think that's true. And when independence comes in the next 4 years, as Andrew Marr has promised us, I think a lot of people look back to the Brexit vote as one of these key points that changed the dial, tilted things. But the truth is, it's in the context of something, and all these events that in the past are all in the context of something. And I think that context has been going on ever since the post-Thatcher world, not even since the Thatcher world started, and that's the context of everything. And a million little conversations that you have on the bus, a million little things that reinforce the fact that the external forces that have such an impact on us aren't necessarily allied to our interests. And the more those conversations happen, the more those little conversations happen, the closer you will be to independence.
Of course.
There you go. I'm finished.
Thank you. That's outstanding. So I'll ask you a quick question. Just thinking about it, we've been talking about external threats and the need to make strategic alliances.
Immigrants.
who
I'm just joking. I'm being stupid.
who would be your number one external threat to Scotland? Speaking in historical terms, who would be your number one external threat to Scotland, or who would be your number one strategic ally?
Oh, well, clearly the number one external threat has been England, hasn't it, to Scotland's existence? Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. In fact, here's the thing. Scotland has been in a union with England 3 times. Yep. Okay, Edward I brought Scotland into a union with England. Yeah, of
course. Yeah,
resolved by Robert the Bruce. Oliver Cromwell brought Scottish Parliament. We got 30 MPs in the English Parliament. Yeah, and it was the restoration of Charles I that sorted that out. And then in 1707, Scotland's brought in a union with England, and Andrew Marr has taken us out of that. So obviously England's been there. Now that English people aren't bad people. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Right? Yeah. It's not, but you know, and this is the thing. Sometimes I get frustrated. You see on social media, people talk crazy.
Oh yeah, always.
People talk crazy, and I think the important thing is, and somebody gets. I did a video last week about 2 brothers from Crieff that travelled to the US, and one settled in Charleston, and the other one settled in New York. And they went out about 7 years before the American Civil War, which meant that just because of where they ended up staying, they ended up on 2 sides of the Civil War, and they ended up in the same battle, right, within yards of each other. Oh. And you're like, oh, how crazy is that? Yep. If patriotism is anything, then it's looking after your brother, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Yep. But once you get, you know, just politics now just seems so, you know, we think it's so divided, but how divided was it in the Jacobite era? Do you know what I mean? How divided was it in, you know, the Wars of Independence era and blah, 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 blah. So, yes, England's been obviously been the threat. And apparently France has been the ally. Right, although sometimes you kind of, do you know what I mean? We go in support of them and get wiped out at Flodden. Do you know what I mean? And then they send us a couple of gold coins for, you know. I think we've kind of, but the thing is, smaller partner. Yeah, you always get the rough end of the stick. Yeah, and that's not because the French are bad or good, or the English are bad or good, or we're bad or good. It's just because that, you know what I mean? On the other side of the world, the same things are happening, aren't they? Do you know what I mean? They just got different labels and they speak with different accents. You know, it's people.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Does that answer the question?
It does, and I think the point you make, it's an interesting. For a Friday night, it's an interesting geopolitical point that either with threats or allies, if you're the junior partner, you'd better watch out because you're going to get the rough end of the stick.
Yes, it's true. I think it's true. Look at the situation just now where Britain has to decide: do we use Huawei technology and upset the Americans, or do we not and upset the Chinese? What do we do? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And certainly when you were talking about strategic alliances and external threats, inevitably Trump came to mind. But that's just the nature of the man. That's the way it goes. Now then, let's see. So we've got well, it's an interesting point. You did pick it up on it as we were going along. But let's have a wee talk about it, because I know there are other people on the call who are equally interested in the Davidian impact on Scotland. So Jerry had said David I was essentially a Norman, having been born and grown up in the Norman court, with which everybody agreed. I think
he was born in the Norman court, but he grew up in the Norman court.
Right,
yeah,
right.
So yeah, when Malcolm dies, Malcolm invades the north of England, gets killed in Alnwick, and Malcolm's brother Donald comes in, takes over, and the kids think, hold on, safer for us to be away from Uncle Donald because they're a threat to Uncle Donald. They could be, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So they flee down to down to London, to the Norman coast. So they grew up Normans, yeah. But they weren't. David wasn't born in a Norman. He grew up a Norman, yeah.
Okay, and in terms of we were just talking about the role of France as being an ally or a threat. Where does that? Do you think that his Norman upbringing that is that part of that ongoing story of our relationship with France?
No. No. But and this is the thing, like there was no certainty that England was going to become Norman, was there? Do you know what I mean? If Harold hadn't had to go up to Stamford Bridge before he had to go down Hastings, maybe the Norman conquest would never have happened. There's a million little possibilities along the way, aren't there?
Yeah.
But, and I was actually thinking about doing a video about this, like 4 marriages that made the United Kingdom, because David's sister marries Henry I, and so David he's a young knight in the English court, bumming about. He's got no title. He's got a couple of elder brothers, a king and a spear in Scotland. What's he going to do? And his sister marries Henry I of England, yeah, dancer, right now, and he's the brother of the Queen. And suddenly he starts to get all this influence, and he's the right-hand man of Henry I, yeah? Mm-hmm. And and very close to him. Do you know what I mean? So now there's another thing. So because Henry I and Matilda, their daughter, right? And Henry makes David swear that he's going to protect the daughter. That's what leads to the Battle of the Standard. But the Scotland at David's time, as a combination between good relations with Henry and then invasion after Henry dies, supposedly to support his niece, Scotland effectively the border was away down to the Humber. Do you know what I mean? Now, what if that? What if David's son Henry hadn't died predeceased him? Yep. Do you know what I mean? And you're a strong guy in position. We might have been. Carlisle might have been in Scotland, and Newcastle might have been in Scotland, and blah, 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 blah. And these are all just accidents that have brought us to where we are, aren't they? That's the kind of point I was rambling on about.
No, I get you. Now, I can see that Liddell's got an interesting question, so we'll try and get Scott unmuted.
Okay.
Somehow. Here he goes, he's unmuted now. Scott, can you hear me?
I certainly can.
Cool. You've got a question, I think, for Bruce.
I do. So you spoke a lot about luck and how we were kind of formed by a series of lucky events. But actually, if you go far enough back in time, you'd argue there was one big unlucky event, which, Scotland and England used to be separate land masses, and through the luck of geology, we got crashed together.
The Lapidus suture.
So, absolutely. So, the question is, if at that point in time we were a little luckier, what country do you think it might have suited us more to crash into instead of England?
Oh, right. Well, but England didn't exist, do you know what I mean, at that time, and England might not have come to be. Do you know what I mean? You can't blame it all on the Lapidus suture. Do you know what I mean? But I don't know. But you would want to be kind of Mediterranean. Sounds quite nice. Oh, it's a bit hot, isn't it? It is a bit hot down there. But I always find the Nordic people and Germans to be very civilized, friendly, outgoing, happy kind of people. Although, to be fair, obviously they've had their history, right? The Germans in the 20th century, and of course the Nordic people back in the 9th century. I mean, but that's the thing, isn't it? The people are people. You know what I mean? And there are ups and downs, and I guess that's the point I'm trying to make, is that we happen to be in this place that we are just now by a series of accidents. And you watch this thing, you watch America just now. And I think, right, that we're Scotland, is we're relatively fortunate. You look at the difference between what's happening right now in Scotland and what's happening in England. I think we're relatively fortunate. But within or outside the United Kingdom, your leaders are always going to change. There's no guarantee. Do you know what I mean? That you see what's happened to America, right? And in such a short time.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? There's no guarantee that Scotland's always going to be this friendly, happy, joyous place, is there? Do you know what I mean?
Well, we can do our best to maintain it, but I think you're right.
Yeah, tonight. Well, yeah, I think tonight we've got that friendly, happy, joyous kind of. No, but and this is the thing. It's all about all of us kind of not being dicks. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, right. And it needs there's a critical mass in any comedy audience, right? Mm-hmm. And especially you do the Fringe, and you do 28 shows in a row or whatever, and you do the same show every night, and it can vary depending on audience reaction. But that's the point: is some nights that you're carried out on people's shoulder, and it's the most glorious event, and then the next night you can die in your arse, and you're doing the same show.
Yep.
But if there's a critical mass of ball bags, it does one thing. There's a critical mass of the good guys, then it does another. And I think our task has to be to make sure that we've got as many of the good guys in Scotland running things and just living, not just running things, but just have the decency and that kind of thing. Because there will be ball bags. There's no doubt about that.
It's human nature. It's human nature. It's absolutely right. No, you're absolutely right. One little thing that we've got a question here that you touched on earlier on, and we're not going to steal the thunder of the work you're doing this weekend, but Gabriella Rita was commented on Facebook, Crannogs are such a pivotal moment in human development. So without giving the game away about your work for this weekend, what's taken you to go to Kenmore over the weekend to make a video in connection with Crannogs?
No, the one that's coming out tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Oh, I should advertise my thing.
Knock yourself.
Scotland History Tours. YouTube.com/Scotland History Tours.
Yeah.
And tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, the one that comes out is the Trinent Massacre. It's about the Trinent Massacre.
Yeah.
And the Crannog one I'm filming tomorrow, it'll come out Tuesday or something like that. And I just think, I think it's a beautiful place. And I often take, people there on tour. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I just think it's one of my favorite places in the world up there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I also think that it's important. It's always difficult when you try to think about what things to do videos about, because there's a whole world out there, and there's some people, I'm sure a lot of the people on this just now, as you can see from some of the comments, mm-hmm. are so knowledgeable, and I'm never going to teach them anything. But there's also people that know nothing about Scotland and its history. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And there will be people out there that know loads of stuff about them, to see that and to go, oh wow, right, that's part of what brought us to this place as well. Do you know what I mean? So that's the. Oh, my light went out. I don't know.
Not to worry.
I don't know when that happened.
No, you're doing
all right. Okay,
you're doing fine. We can see it, but you still look fantastic. Right. Don't worry. The one other question. You know it. One other question that I saw going past was in connection with. It was curiously in connection with Scotland's borders, and I suppose there was a geological aspect to it as well. And from one perspective, Scotland's borders, especially our current or our contemporary borders, are defined by the sea. We've got a very long coastline, so that part of the border is defined. But of course, we have a land border as well.
Well, is it because Shetland's part of Scotland?
Yeah. Well, absolutely.
Now, there's the thing. Right, so I'm assuming most people know that in Shetland, James III married Margaret of Denmark, and our dad didn't have the money for the dowry, 60,000 guilders, I think it was. He said, "Look, I've got 10,000 guilders. Can I give you Orkney and Shetland till the end of the month? when I get my wages. And so Orcadians and Shetlanders suddenly become Scottish citizens. There was no referendum. There's no consultative convention. Do you know what I mean? And and the Isle of Man was part of Scotland as well. So yeah, the sea's not necessarily a border, is it?
Well, I would say certainly not for Celtic people. Certainly not. It was a trade route. It was a highway. Yeah, it was the means of transportation. Absolutely right. So the question was, the observation was in connection with the land border, I suppose, because if the sea borders are, I got the question was, so much of our border is determined by the sea, but we do have a land border. So how fluid or what do you think? What were the big impacts on the changing shape of the land border that we have to the south?
Oh, that's the challenge, isn't it? And it depends on the politics of the two neighbours. And throughout Europe, there are land borders that aren't a problem. And I genuinely think it is one of the challenges for IndyRef too, because in the first IndyRef, we were told, they'll have to put up borders, custom posts, and blah, 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 blah. And we knew it was bollocks because we were both part of the. Am I allowed to say bollocks?
Yes. We're amongst friends.
All right. You knew it's only you and me here. It was nonsense so long as we were in the European Union. Okay. But I think that is one of the challenges that we have to face up to in the new situation, is that it'll be different. But apparently it'll be easy as pie with Ireland. So where there's a will, there's a way, isn't there? Do you know what I mean? It's just that there's no will.
Well, that's a good point, and I guess I better ask this question because it comes from somebody who's involved in All Under One Banner, which ties to the point you just made. So that's why we'll do it. Neil asks, what does Bruce think of a trade canal between the North Sea and the Irish Sea across the Scotland-England border? Some road bridges over it between the two countries and lots of toll money for Scotland from trade vessels accessing the Atlantic, Europe easier and faster than via the English Channel.
Yeah, that's gone well beyond the scope of my knowledge. I've got a joke about that.
Go on.
The idea of a bridge does seem kind of. Although you see what they did between Sweden
and Denmark,
Denmark, incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, where there's a will, there's a way, isn't there? Do you know what I mean?
Definitely.
Who was the guys that built the Sky Bridge? We could get them on the case.
If I'm right, certainly the money man, it was Bank of America, I seem to remember.
All right, there you go. But no, obviously, then what she's talking about is that we are in the European Union, Ireland's in the European Union, and so we trade around that way rather than them going across to Wales and then traveling through England and blah 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 blah. And I would like an environment where we had good relations with our southern neighbours, we had good relations with our neighbours across the seas, and we all kind of traded, because that was one of the good things about the European Union. Do you know what I mean? Was I've gone and done gigs in Hungary and in Germany, and do you know what I mean? And you turn up, you do the gig, you get paid, you disappear, and you know what I mean? Yeah. That's whereas that now, you've got to do. All right, you're going to do a gig for British people in Spain, and you'll have to. We can't run that gig because the paperwork's too much now. It's just a shame. It's a shame, but there you go.
Oh dear! Now there's another question here, I think, coming talking about other subjects for videos that you've not yet made but which might well come along. I think we might see if Carol would like to ask you a question. We'll just get Carol unmuted. 2 seconds.
I lost you there. We might see, then what happened after that?
So we're going to see if I can unmute Carol, and she'll ask.
Okay.
She'll ask you a question about a video that you might make. Here she comes, Carol.
Okay.
Hi, Bruce. Hi.
Hi, Carol. You want to make a video with me?
I've been really enjoying your videos, Bruce.
Oh, good lassie. Good lassie.
I heard you allude to the Scottish Arthur.
The Scottish Arthur. Oh, right, yeah.
And I was just wondering if you've got any plans to make a film about that.
I do you know what? I've got 100 things in my head that I would like to do, but it's getting round to doing them, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Because every day you kind of think, oh, I could do that, but then you've got to find the time, the weather, the location. And I'd be interested to know here. I'd be interested to know what people think. What I tend to do is I tend to look at the calendar, and originally I was going to post videos every Saturday morning, and then something happened midweek, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. And so I posted one midweek, and then something interesting happened the next midweek. You know, when you look at the calendar and you go, oh, that's an interesting story. And so instead of posting every Saturday morning, now I post every Tuesday afternoon or Tuesday evening and Saturday morning. And you're like, I'm doing twice as much as I thought. And I also, the people that are my Patreon members, because you can become a patron and send me £1 a month or £2 a month or £5 a month. There's one for £25 a month. And I put it up there, never thinking of anyone, and you get one of my DVDs signed, actually, and blah, blah, blah. And never for a minute thinking anyone would go for the 25. And then when somebody went to the £25 a month support, I had to go up to my loft to get the DVDs. Anyway, so I make videos. I always make videos for them as well. So the video that goes out, I normally make a thing in the background to go, here's the stuff that I didn't put in the video, or I didn't get around to, or here's some thoughts, or blah, 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 blah. So I'm doing loads of stuff, do you know what I mean? And there's loads of other things that I'd like to do. Yes, that would be one of the things I'd like to do. But what I tend to do is I tend to look at the diary and say, okay, there's a significant anniversary this Saturday. So, it's the anniversaries of events that drive things, because I normally start by saying it's such and such. That's my son, Zach. He's the guy that designs the thumbnails for the videos, okay?
Hey, Zach.
Say, Zach, wave at all the people. Hello, everyone. Right, he's the talent behind the thing, right?
Good job, Zach.
And yeah, so so I'd be interested to know, at the start of the video, I normally say, oh, it's such and such a date, and this happened on this date. And I don't imagine for a minute that everyone that's watching has watched any of my videos, right? But of those that do, I would genuinely be interested to know, is that of interest, or would you be, we don't care, just make the video about Arthur. So I'd be interested to know what people think. Yeah. You can message me on the facebook.com/Scotland History Tours, or go on to one of my videos and I'll see it coming through in that, or I've got a Twitter thing. I'm not very good. I'm not very good with all that stuff. I should be better geared up, shouldn't I? But you'll be able to find me. Yeah.
We'll help with that. We've put the YouTube link into the chat box, and we'll get the.
Yeah, but I'll be interested to know what people think. Is it quite good to go, oh, this is an event and this is an anniversary kind of thing, or is that I'm a waste of? Is that stupid? You know
No, we can do that. I'm pretty sure that Carol's pretty keen that you do a video about the Scottish Arthur, so you.
Yeah, and the Davidian Revolution, which you
say again.
The Davidian Revolution, you talked about him earlier on, David person, the difference that he made to Scotland.
Transformational. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. That Canmore period changed everything, right? And it was they brought the Anglicisation and the Normanisation of Scotland. If Malcolm, David's dad, hadn't killed Macbeth, what would have been the consequences? Do you know what I mean? Mm. That would be interesting. Do you know what I mean? What would have been the consequences?
I kind of click onto this. People think I'm a bit mad on this. I get on my pedestal, but I think that we're still living with the consequences of the Davidian Revolution now.
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying is because of the as a result of that, you get the Normanisation of Scotland. Okay. Because of that. Also, you get, so much the Norman intermarriages, blah, 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 right? You get, and that's what a video that I do want to make is, I want to make a video about 4 marriages that made the United Kingdom. Do you know what I mean? And his sister's marriage to Henry would be the first one in that. Do you know what I mean? But again, it's like, when I get around to doing it. And the thing is, hopefully, because at the minute, the reason I do this is because when lockdown came along, I'm a tour guide and a stand-up comic, and there's no tour guiding, there's no stand-up comedy. So I started to make these videos. And but at some point I have to make a living or find a way to make the videos pay, one of the two. And if I find a way to generate an income, then I'll be doing this for years, and there'll be, do you know what I mean? Yeah. People, oh yeah, I want that now. And you're like, yeah, I know, but there's like, we're never going to run out of stories. Do you know what I mean? There's so much has happened. And the hope is also, like when you post these videos, you're kind of dependent on how much are people already interested in that subject that they're searching for it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So until you build up the subscriber group of people that will go, I wonder what Bruce is talking about this week, I'll trust them and click. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So tomorrow, the Trinent Massacre,
yes,
I think is really interesting, sad, and important story, and it raises questions about also about what is patriotism, what is loyalty, who's got the right to tell you that you should be in the militia and stuff like that. Yeah. But how many people are out there searching on YouTube for the Trinent Massacre? Do you know what I mean?
Oh, but there's an aspect there. You're making a very good point. We've thankfully not in Scotland, but the actions of an armed militia are back in the headlines after the events in Wisconsin with armed citizens shooting each other, allegedly.
It's horrific. It's horrific. The issues are the same. As an African spot. Sorry,
no, fire away.
On you go.
So just saying that the issues remain with us.
I was interrupting you because Scott and listen, I don't want to be down on white folks. Do you know what I mean? Right? No. There are nice white people. Okay. Now none of them came tonight, but there are nice white people out there. You see, what was so upsetting for me is the number of people that are going, that your lives have always mattered. Do you know what I mean? We're just saying, can we get on the same bus as you? Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And so many of these people are going, all lives matter, until some poor sod is crossing the English Channel on a boat, then suddenly his life doesn't matter so much. Sorry, I'm ranting. That's a bit.
No, that's not ranting. It's an entirely reasonable point you're being made. I can see this. I can see the stat in my head. I can see the statue of the lady who was involved in the Trinent Massacre. I can't even remember her name.
Yeah,
it's a big statue in Trinent.
Jack, should I tell you her name? You have to watch Jackie Crookston was the lass's name.
Perfect. But as you say, if you want to learn more, you have to watch the video. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you have to watch the video tomorrow morning. Jackie Crookston, the Trinent Massacre. Yeah.
Perfect.
But that's the thing, is you can't call it the Trinent Massacre. With Zach, who's just come in from his work, he works in his shop. Right. He's now got to design the thumbnail. He's got to do like and normally it's like a picture of me
Yep.
done up as,
yep.
you know, one of the characters involved, and he takes pictures of me and then he does all the design. Yep. So because his computer was in the shop, he's now got to have it ready and up for the tomorrow morning. And so it might be that it'll just be a crappy little picture with red writing tomorrow morning.
Not the usual work of art that has you as Jackie.
Not the usual work of art. Yeah, I don't do that stuff. Do you know what I mean? No. But this is the point: is like I think of the thumbnail will have the Trinent massacre on it, but the point is nobody's googling for that. So I think the title is like social unrest in Scotland, because you've got to find out what people are googling that might be close to your, so that people Google and you go, oh, the Trinent. So Arthurian legends in Scotland. Do you know what I mean? No, there might be some people googling for that.
Yeah, no,
Carol will be googling for that. I'll get one view. I'll get one view.
She's agreeing with you. I can see that. Well, look, you've been talking now for more than an hour, and I've been doing fantastic.
That's never happened before.
You've been doing. It's been just. This would be a full stand-up set. So you've been doing fantastic work. So I think we've had some great questions, and I think we've had, and you certainly have been hugely generous with your time and with the input and with your ideas. And I can see a lot of the very positive responses I'm getting on Facebook and Periscope and in the chat in Zoom and elsewhere, and we'll share them with you. But I think in the circumstances, you've done a man's job tonight. So I think we'll maybe draw a conclusion now, because you've been talking now for more than an hour.
Yeah. Was that actually started to rant about the Black Lives Matter?
No, not at all. Not at all. And to do this properly, I thank you, Bruce, for agreeing to spend your Friday evening with us. And thank you for your thoughts and your insights and the ideas that we've heard throughout the discussion. As I say, I can see that everyone here has enjoyed them immensely. We can all see why your successful stand-up and public speaking career has earned you a reputation for engaging and creating laughter throughout the world, entertaining audiences from Stornoway to Adelaide. So thank you.
Yeah, I can feel smoke going up my backside. Is that you?
Might be. You never know. Perish the thought. So what I was going to say was that on Saturday, the 12th of September, there would have been an all under one banner march in Stirling. Mm-hmm. We were working extremely hard on the arrangements, and we were expecting it to be a fantastic event. Instead, for now, there will be an online ceilidh on Broadcasting Scotland that evening. We are hoping to have as many performers who are local to Stirling taking part, and maybe one or two wee surprises as well. So please search for Broadcasting Scotland on YouTube and enjoy the show on the evening of Saturday the 12th of September. All Under One Banner will host more online talks and discussions here on Zoom into next month and beyond. Coming up, there will be a legal panel discussion with Mike Daly, Michael Gray and Caroline Welsh, and we're planning further events with Paul Kavanagh, Wee Ginger Doug, and also with the trade union movement in Scotland. So please look out for them on All Under One Banner's social media. We're also planning further events, and so if you have any suggestions, then please let us know by messaging us on Facebook. There will also be small, static, socially distanced demonstrations in the months ahead, each extremely carefully organised and appropriate for the circumstances that we find ourselves in at that time. We plan to be in George Square in Glasgow on the Thursday, the 17th of September, so please also watch our social media for more information about that. All Under One Banner is persevering through these unusual times, and I know that everyone else is doing their best too. We're not going away, and we will continue to campaign for independence. You will see announcements in the press and online, and you can be sure that we are working away behind the scenes and have plans for a number of things for the months to come. Meanwhile, I'd like again to say thank you to Bruce. Thank you to Carol and Aaron, who are working way behind the scenes, and thank you to every one of you for joining us here tonight, especially folks who asked such great questions and who've been making such great comments in the background. But in the meantime, it's thank you very much indeed to Bruce. I hope we get you back on this again, Bruce, in the future.
Thanks, Bruce.
And in the meantime, we've been All Under One Banner. Good night.
Yeah, it's done. Sorry.
You're good, Bruce. Hold on.
All right. Is that us?
Almost. Hold on.
All right. Good.
That's okay. You're cool. That's everybody out. Let me just stop the recording.
All right.
Stop.
Oh, so we recorded that bit.
It's all right. We clip it. It's all right. We clip it. It's all right.
All right. Okay.
We did that the first time.